Hello Team Builder, thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Chris Cavert. I'm going to show you an activity today called the number game. If you are watching at my Fun Doing blog, there's all sorts of details about this activity and the downloadables that you can get to play this activity. Now you can do it both in person and online, and you can do this at a safe distance with participants. You can do it with one person and you can do it with a large group as long as you have one of these number game handouts. The number game we borrowed, Lori Frank and I wrote a book called Games for Teachers, and we borrowed from the book Games Trainers Play from Scannell and Newstrom. They allowed us to use that in the book, and I want to share this activity with you because it's one of the most powerful learning experiences that I've been a part of over my career working with especially youth groups. It's a great way to show them how to stick to it, how to overcome kind of that fear of failure, how to find strategies to help get better, how to help each other get better. There's ways that I can show people how I can be a part of the group and how I can help in learning. So I can give them teacher advice, I can give them a strategy or ways that they might be able to learn and grow. And that might be a way for them to understand what I do as well. So there's a lot to do with this activity. Some people call this kind of the personal key punch. It's kind of like if you're familiar with key punch, it has numbers, a number grid. This has 60. We tend to do about 24 on average in key punch in the physical running around activity. But it might be a nice progression to start with something like the number game and then maybe go out as a group and then do it as a physical running around activity, maybe setting it up the same way. So keep in mind, if you are watching at the Fun Doing blog site, all the details below. If you are watching on YouTube, there's a link to the blog where you can access all the information and all the downloads. All right, let's give it a try. Everybody gets one of these pieces of paper, and I usually hand it to them and put it so the numbers are not showing. And then if you have an opportunity to make a grid and you want to do some graphing, this is what's called the learning curve, and I'll show you how this works. You get a nice visual representation of the learning. Basically, what we do is a number of rounds. On this learning curve, there are 7. I've done this with up to 15 rounds, and this has to do with kind of that purposeful objective of sticking to it, even though it's going to get boring, even though it's going to, it's the same thing over and over again. Sometimes we have to deal with those things like school and work, and the same things are repetitive. How do we make it interesting? How do we challenge ourselves? How do we set goals? As we get better, our goal jumps usually are a little smaller. In the beginning, we can make larger ones because we're learning about it. We're learning strategies. We're getting help, right? The strategies we figure out help us to get better. But as we get close to that, what we call learning plateau of something, things are a little more incremental. They're a little smaller. So the idea is I give them, everybody, a piece of paper, and I tell them you're going to have 1 minute to touch as many of the numbers as you can in sequential order, starting with number 1. Number 1 is going to be in the top left corner. When you flip this over, number 1 is circled, top left corner. Every round we start with number 1. Okay, that's basically it. You only can use your index fingers to touch the numbers. Okay. If you're doing this online, I have a PDF download of what you can use online and a video that shows how I've used it online, where they'll just kind of take their index finger and point to the screen, get close to the screen without touching the screen. I always tell them, don't touch the screen. Want to keep the screen as clean as possible, but just get close to that number. But we can only use our index fingers to do that. Okay. So when I say go, I'm going to start the time. You're going to turn your paper over. When I say stop, please remember that last number that you had your finger on, and then turn your paper over. And then that number will instruct them that'll go on the curve, and we'll do that in just a moment. So those are basic directions, and we repeat this as many times as you purposefully program this activity to be. So it goes fairly quickly, but let's give it a little practice. So I'll say go, we flip this over, I start looking, 1, and I'm 2. I always tell people all the numbers are there from 1 to 60. So I guarantee this, it's not a trick. So we're going, and I say stop. Turn this over. If we have the graph, get the graph. If you don't have the graph, you need just some marker, and you mark your number on the back of that piece of paper. Graphing, I go up with the first round, number 1, and I go up, let's say I had about 25. I did pretty well. All right. Now, after the first round, then I'll usually ask, hey, now that you have a number, you kind of get a baseline. Set a goal for yourself for the next round, okay? Remember, all the numbers are there. You're starting with number 1, and you're going as far as you can. Between round 1 and 2, I usually go pretty quickly because I don't want to bring up too much to think about. I just want them to get a little more, one more try at this before we start bringing up other concepts. So we slot over our learning curve. On your mark, get set, go. We flip it over. We go starting at number 1. Always reminding, 1, 2, 4, 5. Go, stop. Flip it over. Bring our learning curve down. Now, oftentimes we'll go a little bit better on round 2. Let's say we got up to 30 on that one. So I mark a little on round 2. You'll see how the learning curve works. And I can then ask them to attach the first dot to the second dot, okay? And then from the corner, I usually go up into that first dot. So the idea then is to be able to graph your progress. Now, after the second round, what I'll ask them before we go, hey, can we share any strategies you had with others? So now I'm promoting the idea of helping others to be successful. Now, they don't have to take advice, but this is advice. This is what I've learned. These are my strategies. They work for me, or this is what I'm trying. Maybe it'll work for you. The idea is just to share things, getting used to sharing ideas without that demand of do it this way. I'm working by myself. Everybody's working by themselves, but then we're doing this together, the same thing together. Maybe we have ways to help each other learn and grow. Any strategies? Cool. We can share those verbally, get them out. If they're online, type them in the chat. And then I tell people, if you want to get some strategies, read the chat. If you want to do it on your own and figure it out on your own, that's awesome. Don't read the chat. So that way, everybody's doing something. When you're online, you can have a large group. We're all doing this together, sharing information if you want. I'm facilitating in the main room, so to speak. All right, round 3. We slide it over. We go 1, 2, 3, keep going. And then we stop. And usually what happens is now, in a lot of cases, numbers go down. There's some stress factors now of improvement. I'm setting goals. Now I'm wanting to reach the goals, but now I'm a little stressed out that I'm not going to make the goals. So I panic. I don't breathe as well. The brain doesn't get the oxygen it needs. So there's often starts to be some failure, so to speak, and numbers go down. Usually in rounds 3 and 4, numbers will go down for people. Some people may go progressively up. They found a strategy that works for them, and they're going to continue to go and be better. That's great. Now, after round 4, here's what I do. If I haven't heard this yet, I will say to the group, so this is after 4 trials. We've set goals. Do we meet our goals? Do we exceed our goals? Do we fall short of our goals? So we talk about goal setting. Are they realistic? Does anything change? No, it's all the same. All the numbers are there, I promise. always starting with number one. So it's routine. Should be getting better, right? Well, what's happening? Well, how about some strategies? Then people will say, I start panicking and then I start saying negative things. I need to say positive things. So now we talk about that idea of that mindset of going into a project. Even though it's getting a little harder for you, things are, you're failing, so to speak, at your goals. This is oftentimes where, in general, kids give up. Oh, I'm not good at this. I'm not going to do it anymore. So they stop. So by forcing them to do this more, they might see that, hey, yeah, if I practice, and if I just relax, I'm going to get better. So some strategies. But one strategy I tell them, I say, sometimes I'll give you some advice. I've seen a lot of things, and I have some thoughts I might share with you, but for the most part, I want you to help each other learn and grow. But I might, at times, if you get really stuck, point you in a direction. So here's a little thought. Consider this. The odd numbers are on the left side of the page. The even numbers are on the right side of the page. Oh, oftentimes they go, oh, you got to be kidding. If nobody found this already and shared the strategy, this is advice I give. If somebody found it already, then I'll ask after 4 rounds, are you using that strategy? What are other people doing? How many people numbers are going up? What is your strategy? Numbers going down. Could you try one of those strategies? We got a few rounds left. Now with that strategy, if you want to, and physically fold the paper in half, like they call hot dog style, then you actually have a line now, a crease, right down the middle of the paper, which shows odds on one side, evens on another. Right? Just advice. You don't have to do it. Just if you'd like to try that strategy. Sometimes people say this strategy distracts them. I was already on a roll. I know what I was doing. They call it zigzagging, which is basically going from one side of the page to the other. But their mental model is zigzagging and not necessarily evens odds. So it's just how we think about things. Then we go again. Oftentimes, people that will use the strategy, there'll be a nice big leap, and then they'll go up after a round or two. Some people will get worse. So it's the idea of finding out what works for you in a situation that may be time sensitive, time pressure. Again, the numbers are 7 rounds on the learning curve. I've played it up to 15 rounds just to emphasize the idea of practice, repetition. We may get really good in the beginning, then fail a little bit, but then start getting better and better and better as we get more comfortable and used to the skills and abilities that we're gaining. So the idea is use it, do as many rounds as you can to be able to emphasize that. So overall, this is a good 20 to 30 minute activity that really emphasizes, again, practice, sticking to it. If you're working on social emotional learning, it's about self-awareness of your emotions, things that are happening to your body, and then how are you managing those emotions. Some people get very upset. Some people have a pen and they throw it down. Some people push the paper off, especially working with kids that have had trouble with these choices over time, and they don't like to fail, so they stop doing whatever it is they're doing so they won't fail. But this is just practice in a safe place to be able to understand what it takes to get beyond that kind of wall of when you think you can't do it anymore to what does it take for you to do it better. And if you do this over 15 times, you might end up with what's called a learning plateau. You'll get as good as you can get based on the resources you have in 1 minute. Over the years, I've only seen this happen a couple of times where someone gets to 60. And then if they do, just tell them, add the direction of, if you get to 60, start over with 1. And then that's just adding 1, 2, 3, and then whatever it numbers at the end. If I have 5, then you ended up with 65. That's okay. Just repeat the pattern. And that leads to even more success because you're already good at the pattern. How do you even get better? So this is one of my favorites, the number game. Again, all the resources are in the blog post. I hope this is helpful to you. And if you have any questions about this or any other ideas that you use this for, please let me know. You can contact me through the fundoing.com blog or the onteambuilding.com blog. All the information is down below in either the blog post or the YouTube information. Again, thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.